I'd like to remind everybody that we'll be recording today's session, as you just got the pop-up. So good morning. My name is Mike Keener. I'm our Assistant Vice Chancellor over Supply Chain Management here at UC Davis. And I am happy to welcome you to our fourth demonstration meeting of the Aggie Enterprise Procure to Pay modules. I wanted to walk through just a couple housekeeping reminder items, and then I'll hand the baton over to our team to walk through some of the demonstrations. But to go through them, first off, what we're going to do today is a tour. This is not training. So I just want to remind everybody that there will be formal training provided for Aggie Enterprise and the various Oracle modules. That is not this. This is intended to be an opportunity for as many folks on campus as possible to have a taste and a flavor of what is coming so that nobody is surprised or shocked. We do these every month. We would love to have folks be repeat attendees. We will showcase different items each month. But again, this is not meant to be a training. It is meant to be sort of a showcase, and then we'll have opportunities after each of the demos to take in Q&A, both verbally, you can take yourself off mute at that time, or through the chat. And in fact, if you want to use the chat to ask questions about what you're seeing, we'll do our best to answer in real time there as well. You may see some access from our team members that you yourselves may not have when we roll out the actual application. That is not surprising. We're still in a development testing mode, so we've got more access than is typically needed. There is no need to take notes. Again, this is really just a demonstration. We're not intended to train you at this time. I wanted to remind everybody that anything you see related to the chart of accounts or the project and poet strings, that is not our realm of responsibility. So there are different work streams in the trenches for Oracle, and one of them is the chart of accounts team. One of them is supply chain, or procure to pay. There are also a whole slew of different security and training and change management teams. We're focusing on the procure to pay pieces. So the chart of account stuff, I have empathize with all of you if it is challenging, but we don't own that area. And then lastly, I think just we will have a survey at the end of this that we'll throw up in chat. Please feel free to fill that out after the demonstration today. We use that information to help guide what we want to show next month. So I really encourage you to just give us a couple tidbits of information about whether or not we're configuring something that will work for you, and or if there's something else you want to see next month or in the following months. And we intend to continue these all the way up until go live and perhaps even afterwards. So until then, keep yourself on mute if you don't mind, until we pause for Q&As. And then, as I said, if you have any questions that you want to ask while they're showing the demonstration, just throw it in chat. We will all jump in there and respond there. With that, today I think we're going to cover a couple of key areas: the requisitions and agreements. So we're going to do, would you mind, and we'll mute there, thank you. We're going to do a little deep dive on the requisitions, digging into the header and the line fields so folks can get more familiar with what those are going to look like. We're then going to take a look at some of the agreement forms. Then we'll shift gears after a little Q&A and take a look at some of the non-PO invoice functionality, specifically around the form that people are going to fill out. And then if we have time remaining, we'll dive in a little bit to reporting. I think that's been something people have been asking to see. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to hand it over to Mark Gibson on our team, who is going to show us some of the requisition stuff.
Okay, good morning, everyone. I'm going to go on ahead and share my screen. Please let me know if you're seeing it. You should see the Oracle Fusion Cloud application. Thumbs up from anyone? Good. Okay, so this is the basic screen that we come into when we're doing our requisitions. This is where you start when you log into Aggie Enterprise. I already previously logged in, so I can't show you that process. For purchase requisitions, you're going to go to this little cart feature. It says Purchase Requisitions. I'm going to click on it. This should start to feel familiar as we do this more and more often in these demos. So I just kind of want to start reiterating how to get through this. The big thing, especially for those that have switched from the different testing instances, is always make sure that you have, the first time you join, set up your requisition preferences. I had this mistake, even though I've done it 4 or 5 times. So making sure, especially when you join Aggie Enterprise the first time, jump in, add a favorite charge account, You can add nicknames, whatnot, and then also a deliver to location that is appropriate for you. So, and that is once again done through clicking this more tasks, update requisition preferences. So, today I'm going to kind of do a deep dive into some of the what they have called the distribution flex fields. So we're going to start by trying to order a piece of equipment for a lab on campus. And I'm going to try and hit as many of the different fields as possible to kind of demonstrate what's going on. So the first item is going to be a piece of lab equipment. And it's actually going to be R&D tax exemption. So I'm going to add a little note just so you guys can follow along with what I'm changing. Category name. A good thing about this is it's very quick to search. So you saw how I typed in lab and you could start seeing the different categories. Categories is the equivalent of the commodity code in KFS currently. So I'm going to kind of go through. Let me know if I start going too fast, but I'm trying to keep this as short as possible. Another key thing to remember when you're entering all these is to make sure you keep entering the supplier, especially when you're manually entering these documents. So I'm just going to use Thermo Fisher for this because they're one of our major vendors. I'm going to say it's the Asheville location. Actually, I'm going to do this 145476 And then also make sure that you are consistent about doing the same supplier site, because what will happen is the system will break it out. Luckily, I've noticed that Aggie Enterprise kind of highlights the one you had previously selected, and I'll demonstrate that as I add more items. So we're just going to select purchasing 3 for right now. And then we're going to click add to cart, and it's actually going to come back to this page. So here's where I want to demonstrate like, okay, so I did a quantity because I have a piece of equipment, but now I want to add a fixed price item like installation. So I'm going to go in and I could actually change the type and you'll see how it changes the layout of the screen. So just helping to demonstrate how you could bounce between the different options when entering these documents manually. So I'm going to call this installation. We're going to just use other services for right now, just because I don't want to have to find the correct one. And I'm trying to be expeditious on this. And I'm going to say it's $1,000. I'm trying to use big round numbers so that we could do the math easier as well. Supplier site. So as I talked about before, how it kind of brings up the one you selected previously, the PUR3 is actually separated from the other ones and it's actually in there twice. So that's a way to help you quickly identify what you had previously selected as you're adding these. Those that will be using OPP and Dynamics SL, my understanding is that they will be feeding into this system, so you won't have to manually enter as many documents. So that will be helpful, but this is a good thing to practice, especially when we get into the user acceptance testing, or if you're a super user doing this as well. That way you're just familiar with the system and what buttons you need to click. So we're going to go back to a quantity-based recognition as well. And I'm going to say this is lab accessories. Oops, if I could spell. And this is going to be taxable. We're just going to look for laboratory. Say 110. Oops. This is unit of measure, so it should be each or case or stuff like that. $10 supplier. Picture. You can see that Oracle is kind of finicky if you don't have the spaces in there, so that's something to keep in mind. 3. And then I'm also going to, on the last line when I add it, I kind of want to demonstrate what happens if you forget and how you could add it. So I'm going to actually not add the supplier information as well. So this last one, I'm going to say it's a fixed price as well. And I'm going to do warranty. Also taxable. So this is going to be lab, and I'm just going to use lab equipment to demonstrate where if we couldn't find the correct my code, how we could use some of the distribution flex fields to actually help us identify the correct tax codes for the system. I said I was going to do that. Okay, so now I've added these 4 lines to the now that I've added the 4 lines to the cart, we're going to click on the cart and we're going to go to review. So this will bring up the main page. One thing I've noticed is as we enter these documents, typically it brings up the description of the first line as the business purpose or description. I have a tendency to change these to something more fitting when I'm doing it. So I'm just going to say lab equipment test. That way it's easier to identify just in case you keep buying repeat items. So now this is where we start seeing the different fields and their purposes. So because this has a service that is going to be occurring with the installation, we're going to say that the service is on campus or a university location. So we have this click down, so we could say not applicable if we know that there's no services involved. If it's at a university location, very obvious that you'd select that if it's a non-university location. So kind of following through. Since I'm having this shift to campus for a lab on campus, I'm going to select university location. Where will services be performed? Provide city and state. This is being done to gather the information for the tax accounting so that if somebody is working remotely, that they withhold taxes appropriately. Next is the confirming order field. If this is checked, it will route the order automatically to a buyer for supply chain management to review and process. And then reference, I believe, is just where you could add a quote reference number for the vendor. And then finally, PO end date may not apply in some instances, but it's mainly there for adding when we do the departmental blanket order process that they have put in place for the new one. And then the final big header DFF is the need buyer review. This will also automatically route to the buyer if we find that the category code we have selected or the dollar amount we have selected is not properly routing, and we know it should be routing to the buyer for final placement. So now this is where we get into the individual line distribution flex fields. So to access these, you can see down below, I'm going to adjust my screen. So as you click on each one of these, you can see that the line number will change here to match what's up. And this is where you will make your changes below. So I'm going to say that this one is R&D. So I scroll down. It's already filled in the stuff based on my preferred charge account. But what will need to happen is I scroll all the way under billing to the right, and then I will do an R&D exemption form attached. So there is only one option. So if you have this R&D exemption, you would click this form and you're going to be required to attach a form that will route to, I think we want going to the buyer level. And I'll show you how the attachment process is here. So under notes and attachments, this is where you would also add any references, quotes, and these are all at the line level. So you could actually have multiple notes per line to the supplier, or not even to the supplier. You could have a note to the supplier on each line that's unique to each line. You can also have attachments that are unique to each line. So to add attachments, you would simply click this plus sign. And then it's going to ask what you want to attach. So you have the option of file, text, URL. And then I'm going to say, I'm going to do a file. And do we want it internal to requisition, miscellaneous, to approver, to buyer, to receiver, to supplier? So internal to requisition means it will stay with the requisition. Anyone that goes back and looks at the requisition will see that attachment. If it's to the approver, it means it's only sent to the approver, and it could be any documentation of the approval that they want to pass along for the fiscal officer to see, but nobody else will be able to see it. To the buyer means that it will route to the buyer for the buyer to review as needed. To the receiver means that any receiver that goes into the system will only see that document. And finally, to the supplier means that when the final PO is issued to the supplier, a copy of that attachment will be included with the email. And it actually, on the demonstration we've seen, it actually attaches it based on the information provided. And if you attach multiple times, it will only send one copy to the supplier. So say you're sending the final specs and you attach it to multiple lines, they'll only send one copy of that to the supplier along with a copy of the PO. So because I am doing R&D exemption, I'm just going to attach a blank form. It's going to pull in the title from the document name, and I'm going to say R&D form for this. And I think this is buyer. I can't recall. Anyone for R&D forms? I'll just say it's buyer, and we'll get clarification going forward.
Yes, buyer. Sorry, I was finding the unmute.
Thank you, Mike.
Wouldn't you need that if the fiscal officer needs to make sure it's attached? Wouldn't the fiscal officer want to see it too?
It's going to route through and ultimately end with the buyer.
Okay.
But you were
So
saying
everybody will see it in the process before.
Okay. That was my mistake. I didn't understand that. So yeah. Okay, so I'm going to attach this document. And so you can see that it's attached, and it's actually attached specific to the line that has this R&D form on it. So next we're going to move to installation. Actually, installation, I use services, so it won't add tax, so that should be fine. But I'll just click in to show you the differences. So the non-taxable doesn't apply because the actual categories code has been set up as untaxed. So we don't have to worry about it there. Lab accessories, we're just going to double check. It's not a requirement, but I like to always double check that everything pulled in correctly. So we can see everything looks fine. Now this warranty, I know I'm using a taxable category code, but it should be untaxed. So I'm going to click this non-taxable button. And so by clicking that, it's going to tell Oracle to suppress the tax calculation on this line. And then this is also the line that I forgot the supplier. And I forgot to demonstrate this. So you can see that there's no supplier listed here. So when this routes, it will actually not air out. It will actually split it off into two separate POs because there isn't a supplier. So to correct this, what I've found you need to do is click on the line that is affected, and then click this pencil, the edit. And when you go in there, you'll have the option to add the supplier as needed. So I'm going to look up the supplier. And we are using this 145476. And as I mentioned before, it shows you the PUR3 number is the one I've been selecting previously. So we're going to click OK. Now we could actually see down below that it's added this information to this. So on top of the notes and attachments at the line level, there is also notes and attachments at the header level, which are very similar to the line level, but it's carried across the same. It just isn't tied specific to each line. So as change orders happen, it will go out through that process. And it looks very similar to the other change order field. So you could add file text URL, you could do miscellaneous to approver, internal. So it's all the same settings. It's just a different way to attach documents. I don't know if there's been a standard set of where to attach all these. So as always, we click and save. And then when we calculate the amount of tax, we should see 13,403.75. So we have a calculation of 13,403.75. So that's showing that the R&D flag has worked. It's pulling in at half the tax rate instead of the 725 that we would have expected on campus. It also shows that we properly tax the lab accessories because that should be 7250. So it looks like everything came in correctly. And so now we simply submit and it will route to the fiscal approval for processing. And you'll get this notification. And look, we can even view the PDF. Let's see if I can share that really quick. This is the PDF of the requisition, not the PDF, of course. So this is what the PDF of the requisition looks like at this point. So we can see that's lab equipment. We have the installation and everything. You can see it's non-taxable. You can see the amounts. It doesn't carry the tax over because that's calculated internally in Oracle. So I think that is all I had to discuss at this point. Is there any questions on what I missed or anything that you'd like to go over again?
Feel free to take yourself off mute.
So we've had some good questions in chat that I think we're trying to respond to in real time. But this is an opportunity if you wanted to get a little more nitty gritty. Mark can go back into something and poke around in something if you have any questions about any of the screens you saw. I'm sure this isn't as crystal clear as it sounds.
Yeah, I think I put a note in the chat, but I guess I'm a little interested or kind of curious about that those specialized routing categories. That's sort of interesting because it's almost like you're putting an attachment in a step in the routing process. And so I'm curious if a document was needed for one step of the process, and then the process is completed, can you go back? Can that person who viewed a document that was necessary to move a process along, can they go back and look at that? Or so that's kind of an interesting options, I guess, that are available. So I would just be curious about trying to understand that a little bit more, what that means. Does it go away? Is it kind of like a flash? You get to see it and then nobody can go back once the full workflow has been completed. And maybe this just means that, you know, if that's problematic and you can't go back, that maybe we look at one of those more broader options. I don't know. Interesting.
So Mark, why don't you bring up the attachment screen again so we can talk directly to something on the screen.
Yeah, I'm just going to open up a different requisition really quick. Because I saw another question on how to, that Matt answered, but about adding vendors that is also going to demonstrate. So, there we go. So I'm pulling up an old requisition I had saved. So just to demonstrate that, since this probably hasn't been done before, there you could go to view more, or you could click this. So you could see I have a couple approved, one pending approval. That is the one I just created. This incomplete one is the one I'm going to just grab right now, 292. And this was one I was doing as a test the other day. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to actions, edit, and then it'll allow me to do all the edits that I had done previously. So more specifically, I guess it doesn't matter whether it's the header or the line level one. So I'm just going to open up the header one.
And we should probably preface this a little bit, like trying to think of the right analogy to explain this, but basically we've spent quite a long time learning how to navigate through Oracle to sort of achieve our goals and objectives. So it's sort of akin to, we got to get from here to Tahoe, and we know to get on 80, and we know to go up through, Roseville, and we get there. if along the way someone says, what happens if I get off here, at Carmichael, what do I do next? We don't always know the answer because we know the right path. So there's a lot of options in Oracle that because of the way this is a cloud system and that we are not customizing this, we are just configuring it for our use. We're going to end up with all kinds of exit ramps that we may not want people to take, but we can't close. So I just want to sort of preface that. So it's not just unique to this particular example right here with these drop downs, but our guides are going to say, when you're attaching something, you're going to pick X, Y, or Z. There may be 14 other options on the list. Don't pick them. So,
And
No,
one
that's
quick
all
thing. Oh, sorry, Shireen, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just gonna say, well, that makes good sense, because I think that's a great point, that we probably will see lots of options. And so it will be kind of like that best practice for everybody as we start to get up to speed and we start working in the system, that, the best route would be one that would allow an attachment to be viewable. And then as we, by anybody. And so then as we get more experience in the system, then maybe we can make some refinements or whatever. I think just the idea of giving people a best practice and telling them, yes, pick this one. This will give you the most flexibility. I think that will be important for people. So that sounds great. Thank you.
Yeah, and sorry, I was trying to answer some of the other questions on the chat. So I think, Shireen, if I'm probably getting your question correctly, when you select miscellaneous, that means that everyone's going to be able to see it. So that's likely your best practice at first, where you just have an attachment that you don't have any constraints that anyone will be able to see. So you could just select miscellaneous, and then it should roll. The approver will see it, the purchase order will see it. It will get forwarded to the vendor as well. So we could definitely, like you said, we need to come up with what each of them does and kind of have the specific instructions. But I think maybe as best practice at first, miscellaneous will kind of show it to everybody.
What we found so far also is, so if it's going to the approver, you pick that, it's only going to go to the approver. If you pick to the buyer, the approver and the buyer are going to see it. And so it's kind of working backwards. If you're going all the way to the supplier, everybody's going to see it along the way. So it's just where it really stops so far is what we've seen.
I'm sorry, Mike, can you
Thank you.
say that one more time? So if what I'm hearing you say is that if we select supplier, then it is like selecting miscellaneous because everyone along the way will see it?
Yeah, it's going to carry through every single document or every single step and ultimately go to the supplier.
Thank you.
Kate.
A question. So this is set. We can't ad hoc route it to other people, right?
Are
No,
you?
You mean the workflow or the attachments?
The workflow, not just the attachments.
Okay, this is just the attachments. So the attachments, no.
Okay.
The workflow, yes. So you have an option to, I'm trying to come up with the right, I believe it's route task. We have it in our training. So when you get the requisition approval as the department approver, right, you could route task. So you are approving and then moving it on to somebody else that you select. So you are able to do that, yes.
Eddie, do you want to see if you could do that with the document I just created?
So it was my understanding that if we couldn't, you could only have the account manager approve it. We can't route it to, say, a PI
Well,
and as a
That's the
middleman.
approval. This is just more of an FYI, an additional. You're not creating a new approval step.
So we can't add a PI in the middle, right?
To physically go in and approve,
Correct.
or to just see it through the process, be CC'd as it's moving through. Eddie, can you pull that up, Eddie?
I would ideally like them to approve, but CCing would be better than nothing.
Yeah, give me 1 second here. I'm just.
Mike, you already know about this, right? For chemistry.
Oh yeah, yeah.
All right. So
Well, I mean, I'm pretty sure that there is an ad hoc approval ability, but somebody
Yeah.
more
Just
closely
like
in
an
the system
Aggie
can
buy,
correct
we
me.
can do that
Yeah.
now.
So let me take a quick look at it. I will say I don't want to deviate too much from what we have planned for today. But let me very quickly take a look at the approvals. But Mark, you said sent requisition went to me. Okay, there we go. So I guess a little peek into what approvals look like. I'm the approver for this specific department that Mark utilized. So there are going to be multiple individuals set up for that approval routing for that department, right? I believe that effort is ongoing right now. So as the approver, I could, I have the approval here. You can see the requisition. I could go ahead and, select the requisition PDF if I want to look at it. I could go into the requisition and take a closer look for the purposes here. Again, I could approve it or reject it. I'm going to claim it, which takes it away from the other people's queues and keeps it only on mine. And now I have some actions here. You can use the route task functionality. And again, for those of you on the super user team for SCM, we do have this listed, I believe, in our user guides. So I will select, this is good, but please PI XYZ review as well. And then you will find that person's name here. And let's
Route
say
it to me, Eddie.
Yeah. What's your email? Is it
M.A. Morgan. M.A.
MA? Okay. Go. So I'm approving. And then hopefully if this works, if it doesn't make us look bad, it will go over to Mike Morgan's queue, and then he will then have to approve as well. So hopefully, Kate, that is what you were referring to.
So that's, for me, great news. I thought that was not possible. So that sounds pretty great. Awesome.
And honestly, it could have been not possible 6 months ago, and then we figured out that it was. So,
Okay.
so I think that might be what it is. So I do believe we have it in our user guides. Again, we can kind of confirm if Mike, you can just say, hey, yeah, I see it in my bell. It just usually takes a few seconds obviously to show up. But that functionality looks like it's there.
And I just had one more question. I haven't been on all these demos, but maybe you guys have demoed this in a different day. But so today you were just adding on products that looks like you already knew exactly what you wanted when you made your requisition. But what is the browsing? Have you demoed what the browsing process looks like when okay, I know I want this piece of equipment, but I'm trying to choose between 3 or 4 different things and I want to browse around? We still have browsing capabilities, right? Like in Aggie Buy?
In catalog shopping?
Mhm.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. We weren't doing catalog ordering today.
Yeah.
I believe we did that maybe 1 or 2 demos ago,
Okay.
and we'll get those recordings back up. But
Okay.
100%, all the catalogs will look and feel very similar.
Okay. Thank you.
This is more of your traditional KFS requisition that we were walking through.
So here it is, Eddie.
Cool. Awesome. Thanks, Mike.
Okay. And I'm just skimming through before we move on to the next thing. I'm looking through the chat to see if there's anything we didn't address. If you had a question that we didn't capture or talk
Somebody
about.
asked to see what it looks like to edit multiple lines.
Yeah. Are we on time here?
But
I think we've got
Rolita
time to
also
pop
has
into
a
that.
question real quick. Her hand raised.
So yeah, it looks like you can just keep rerouting it.
Yep.
Okay.
Arlita, did you have a question?
Yeah, I have a question, and maybe this was addressed already in previous demos as well, or maybe this is not the right time to ask this question. However, for those units using the OPP system now, doing the requisitions, should we continue utilizing the OPP system once this is implemented?
That's not our horse to race. That's a departmental decision. OPP will integrate into Oracle the same way it integrates into Koali.
Okay, so if the department still decided to use the OPP system to place requisitions, we can do that.
Yeah, and I would be careful with the semantics there. You're not placing requisitions. You're just doing a pre-purchase internal departmental request.
Correct.
The output of that would then be a requisition in our line of business system.
Correct. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Sure. So I think the only other one that might be worth just showing briefly, if we've got the time, Mark, is that multi-line question?
Yeah.
If you're
Anything
comfortable
to share?
demoing that.
Or who's sharing right now?
I believe, Mike, are you still up?
Yeah.
You could hop off and let Mark drive it.
One of the first questions I actually did was further back up was how to add lines, repeated lines. So like the 50 line question. Once you've added lines, you can always go in and there's this option to hit duplicate. So I'm actually going to do like the lab accessories for an example versus equipment, just because it's a little easier. If you hit duplicate, it will add this line up at the top, but it's line number 5. So you could just keep doing that and then go in and make the changes to the individual lines. But if you want to edit multiple lines, if you want to select all the lines, it's kind of a hidden feature. If you click in this upper left next to the line, it will select all the lines, and then you could edit multiple lines. And it brings you into this field that shows you the selected lines and what you can change. You could change the requester, you could change the deliver to location, the delivery dates, the urgency need, even the billing information, adding notes, stuff like that. But you can't go in and change each individual line's details. You can't go change the price. You have to do that on the individual lines themselves. One thing I do want to point out is that if you make any change, once you make a selection or a change in this document, so say I want to change all this to internal, and I'm going to have this actually delivered to off campus. So I'm just going to pick a off campus location, and I'm going to change the delivery date to June 26th. It will overwrite what was previously in there, and even the same. So this had all the R&D information previously selected. But if I change, even just keeping the account same, it overwrites the information based on what you've changed here. Is my button. So I'm going to click OK. Oh, whoops. Yes, you have to enter percentage. So we'll see that it's actually changed the R&D information on these lines. Let me just like, so this line, if I scroll over, it actually showed it zeroed it out because you made a change to the line of the chart of accounts. So you'll have to go, if you make a selection like this, you'll have to go back and make these selections. But that's the benefit of calculating the tax. For some reason, I always forget that I have to enter a budget date. So it's going to do this on all this. Okay. We're going to go back and I'm going to make a change. And I think you could do it for now.
Yeah, you will, anybody sharp-eyed people would have noticed a little quirk there when Mark went back in to re-edit the lines. It does zero out the entire accounting string. You'll have to start from scratch.
Yeah, it's an unfortunate thing, but hopefully you don't have to make that mistake too many times to learn from it. But if we calculate the amount with tax, we'll see that the amount's now going to say like 14,990. I think. Oh, 15. Okay, yeah. Because the non-taxable amount. Oh, I added something. So you can see if we go into these individual lines, let's look at the equipment, that the R&D amount isn't there. So I'm going to have to add it. And then we have this item warranty should be non-taxable. And actually we added this line in error. So you can always delete a line too by simply selecting the line you want and hitting this delete. So that line that I copied earlier to demonstrate, that was an error. So I'm going to go on ahead and do that. I'm going to hit save. And this is where we have a known bug that we're working with Oracle on. There's kind of a delay in the way it's calling for this tax information, so it may not show properly. But Oracle and our consultants Deloitte are working on it. They're aware. We just found it like yesterday. So yeah, it's corrected the tax to the extent, but it's not understanding all the changes I just made. But if we wait 5 minutes, it'll work just fine. So. Did that answer the questions that were out there?
I think we're pretty good. I'll just throw it out to my team. Does anyone know what budget date is meant to drive?
I think we just took a detour in Folsom.
Exactly. Getting off the freeway.
I believe it's related to, no, I'll be lying if I say I knew exactly. I believe it's related to projects, but in general, it defaults to today. There's one of those fields that is just always going to be there, but we could always we could definitely make sure to get the answer for that.
Okay, now with that, I think we've beat up the requisition quite a bit. At that point, I think we'll hop over and let Mr. Morgan show us some of the agreement form information. But continue firing your questions off in chat if you've got anything you want to share.
Okay, thanks, Mike. Everybody see my screen okay? Perfect. So we're on the requisition screen, and down below here under the request forms, you'll see I've got 8, 9, 10, 11. The average user probably will not see all of those. They definitely will see 1 through 8. And then we have a couple of restricted that only delegated departments like DCM and others will have access to that to continue on with their activities. But 1 and 2 shouldn't look any different, right? Those are the quantity and fixed price requisitions. 3 and 4 we'll go over in a later date. Those ones are going to be for adding new lines to an existing PO. What we want to talk about today is the agreement reviews. These are activities where 2 things. 1, we're not going to pay through the PO process, or 2, we need a buyer to review something like a non-disclosure form or any other no-cost activity that has terms and conditions. These 2 here will be ultimately paid by a credit card. So if you're doing a catering or lodging and you need a buyer to review your terms and conditions to get the agreement signed, but ultimately at the end of the day, you're going to pay by a credit card. I think currently we use those no-cost agreements. These will be similar to that. So you could just go in, click on it. Everything populates basically except for the item. So what are you trying to do? This one's a fixed price. So maybe please review agreement. If you pick the wrong one, you can always toggle through up here. The supplier, you put in your supplier information. Supplier site, same thing. One of the things I saw in the chat that I'll show really quickly is if you go to advanced, you see a little more information on the supplier sites that may help you pick the right one. Now you can actually see the addresses. So when Mark was going through, all you saw was purchasing and then the number. But if you go to advanced, you can see the actual addresses. So one of the things that this is an Oracle limitation, is we couldn't do an actual no cost. So these are all defaulted to a penny. So you'll never be able to add money to them. These are strictly just to transmit information to a buyer to review either an agreement, terms and conditions. So afterwards, the buyer will receive this. It gets submitted. The buyer can review the agreement, fill out the agreement, sign it, attach it back to this, send the agreement back to the requester, and then the requester who's paying with a credit card can use this purchase order as the reference, because that's where your agreement document resides. It's tied to this. So if you're paying with your credit card, when you go to reconcile your credit card charge, you can use this purchase order tying that order back to this activity. So on the form page, the agreement reviews, we've put them out here, and you guys can let us know if these make sense, the terminology. This is just a review for catering, lodging, and event. Ultimately, you're going to pay with a credit card. Agreement review for online subscriptions. So we all do those, got to do the click through terms and conditions. The buyer needs to review them, but ultimately we're going to pay with a credit card. Non-disclosure, those are no cost, non-disclosure, and any other agreement review that is no cost. So those no cost, non-disclosure, if you have a cost associated with your activity, you're going to use one of these, quantity or fixed price, because ultimately we're going to be paying with a PO. These agreements are non-PO payments. These two are for credit cards, and these ones are, we don't have any payments. Does that make sense? Does the terminology make sense? The utilization would be similar to the no cost agreement that we currently use in KFS.
And Mike, we have a question in chat, and I think the answer is yes, right? So for the CLE event agreement, when you said credit card payment, you're referring to travel card. I believe the answer to that is yes.
Yes, sorry. I'm saying credit card payment. I should be saying card payment.
Just to further clarify on that one, that would work for, there's different scenarios where it's appropriate to use a P card, and there are certain scenarios where it's appropriate to use a travel card. Both of those may need one of those two agreement types. There are interchangeable. So you may have online subscriptions where it is appropriate because you're paying for members of your staff in the organization to take an online training. It's appropriate to use your P card. You may also be doing something where you're signing up for what you think is online training, but it's really a virtual conference, where maybe it's more appropriate to use a travel card. In both cases, they are a card. So if you're using a card to make the payment, those are the two that you want to be using.
And if there's payment involved and they don't take a credit card, then you're going to go back to the standard, either quantity or fixed price, and that will be a PO payment. Revenue agreements, we're not ready to showcase those. We're still developing the process on that. It's coming though.
And Tracy, I'm not sure we have a great answer yet for your question, because that doesn't sit very well with me either.
Okay, no worries. Just throwing it out there.
Yeah, we're trying to balance not having 35 different options down here under request forms, but also not confusing people by having too ambiguous of a title. So I could kind of see that. It might depend on what kind of software you're doing. So I think maybe we'll look at that one a little more, whether or not we need a different review for those types of transactions where it needs, procurement review, but then it's going to be settled on a P card.
Great. It doesn't happen a lot, but it does happen. And when we're approving those travel documents, fiscal officer makes sure that that agreement is there, and now it'll be a PO that is there. So it's kind of like, how do you have a PO that has no money on it? So it's kind of a catch-22 situation that we're sort of facing.
Yeah, and I would say it may not happen a lot with your group, but it happens a lot on campus.
Yeah,
We do a lot of P card settlement that has gone through a procurement review. So
Right.
we might need another option for that.
And all of these,
It might also fall under online subscription. We just might need to change that name a little bit.
It might.
all of these are hard coded to a penny. We couldn't do actually no cost. So at the end, the buyer will have to close out that PO, and then that PO will actually just be used as the record, tying it to the card activity. Would a loan agreement with no cost be entered into 6 or 8? Well, not 6, because that's would be a card payment. So it would be 8. It would be a no cost agreement review other. Any other questions on those?
So Mike, I know you did mention the revenue piece, but I just wanted to clarify with both the people who asked about it, that will not be initiated by a requisition. So revenue agreements are actually going to be initiated in a completely different module of Oracle, the accounts receivable module. And then their team is going to hand that contracting review, most likely offline from Oracle, to the procurement team to review the contract languages and negotiate the revenue agreements. And then they're going to be stored and managed outside of procurement in Oracle. So not a requisition. And that form is not being developed by us, that intake, that again is being developed by the AR team. And then Mike, did you see Norma's question there at the bottom? Did you get that one? So would a loan equipment with no cost be entered under number 8? I suspect.
Yes.
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 Independent contractors, the fact that they are independent, Joy, is irrelevant. It's what you're buying that matters. So if you're buying a service, you would most likely use number 2 on the requisition forms there. If that particular contractor is billing with a unit of measure, like a number of hours, you could use number 1.
I think those are all the ones in chat.
Okay. Any other questions that anyone wants to come off of mute and ask?
Why are there lines to say add another line to an existing PO? Like, why is that there versus a change order?
As well, that's going to be a future demo, but
Okay. No problem.
you can make a change order just high level. You can make limited change orders through the requisition, right? Through the change order process. If you forgot to add a line, this is going to be the process of adding a line to an existing. So you have a PO, it's out. It got really complicated and was erroring out. So we actually took this add a new line to an existing PO from UC San Diego. This is how they're doing it. So the change order process will be twofold. One, minor changes, except adding a line, you can go through the requisition process. But if you have to add a line to an existing order, you're going to have to either go through number 3 or number 4. But we will demo that. We're still testing it, and it seems to be working, but more testing before we show it off.
Okay, thanks for the overview.
Yeah, short version there, Tracy. There is no PO amendment functionality for end users as there is in Koali. So we have to find other ways to get to that same goal. Okay, well, I think with that, we're good on requisitions and agreements. We're going to shift over to accounts payable now. And who's going to be doing our demo? Is it Marina?
Yes, it's me.
All right, fantastic. Thank you. So we're going to, well, you tell the group what you're going to show.
Okay, hi everyone, I'm Marina. I'm the invoice processing lead, and I will be showing you the non-PO payment request form. I'll also be showing you what it looks like when it comes through on the invoicing side and how we process it. So let me go ahead and share my screen. Okay. So this is the non-PO payment request form. Pretty basic. It's got, I'll just go through it real quick, you know, payee name, the supplier site, invoice number, amount, description, and then your line items down here. Something I want to mention is that this request form is required for every non-PO payment request. So if we don't have this form, we can't process your request. And this form can be used in lieu of an invoice. So if you have some other attachment you don't want to send in, and you just want to send this form in, that's fine. We can process off just this form, but we do need this form to process. I'll just go through and basically fill one out and show you how to get the information. So let's just pretend we're paying of allergy. So over here on supplier site, if you hover over supplier site, it has a link that will link you to Oracle to search for the supplier site. So you'll go ahead and log on. And mine is opening up in Chrome. So if yours is the same and it's slow or it's not really working well, go ahead and try Firefox. So it'll open up to your home page and you'll go into suppliers. And you come to this overview page, and you're going to go over to the right where this little paper is and click on that and click on manage suppliers. And this takes you to the search function. So you can just do a basic search with keywords. You can go to advanced if you want, and that shows you a bunch of extra fields. If you have that information and want to search that way, I'll just show it to you real quick if it loads. Might open this in Firefox. This is going kind of slow. Let me do it in here real quick, since, like I said, Chrome is a bit slow sometimes. So manage suppliers, go to advanced, and then you'll see there's just extra fields like the taxpayer ID, supplier type, other stuff. But I'll just go back to basic for this one. So I'm just looking up allergy. You can use your wildcard. And it will show you all the suppliers that have the word allergy in it. So we're going to go ahead and pick the one that I had. And so the first page that comes up is their profile, information about that supplier. And you want to go to sites. And that will list all of the addresses associated with that supplier. So on this page, you just want to make sure you are selecting the correct address, because you just want to be accurate. I mean, we wouldn't know if you're picking the right or incorrect one. So, you just want to make sure you're picking the one that's applicable. So we're going to go ahead and go with PUR2 and go back to the form and enter that in. Oops. And the next field is invoice number. This wasn't required. It's not currently required in KFS, but because you'll have the ability to search, through all the things you submit in Oracle, you should put something in here that's going to be easy to find what you're submitting. So if you're submitting the same thing, let's say every month, it doesn't make sense to use that same description for each submission, because when you pull up your search results, it'll all be the same. So if, for example, I'm just saying we're going to be paying a membership. So I would put like the name of the person, maybe a date, something that will just make it more identifiable for you when you're searching. The amount, and then just put your description that you would normally put. And then the requester information, put the person that would be contacted in case there's an issue with the request. This is the person we're reaching out to with any questions that we have. And then you go down to your invoice line information and just fill that out. This is the product category. It's the drop down. It's basically like the stuff that's in the DV. You just go in and pick which one matches what you're paying. I think membership dues. There we go. And then you would go ahead and put in your account information. I'm just using something that we have on hand for testing, but obviously you'll want to use whatever is applicable to your department and make sure you're putting in the right numbers here. So just go through that real quick. And then your line description. I don't know how many characters are available, but try not to make it too long, I would say. So that's basically it. You have your header information, you have your line information. If you have another additional line, go ahead and put that there. This box down here, additional information. If you had another line you needed to add, if you have any extra comments, something you really need to let us know, go ahead and utilize this box and put that information in there. And then at this point, you would either hit save as would save it onto your desktop. And at that point, you could include other attachments that you need, whatever backup. Just really important, if you have something that you need to send in with this form, it needs to be on one attachment, one PDF file. So if you're sending in an email and it's got 5 attachments, Oracle will create 5 different tickets. And at that point, it's hard for us to, match or see what happened. So everything that's needed for this payment request has to be on that one PDF. And then if you click submit, I believe that opens up your email directly, and then you would just be able to submit this at that step. So we have one that we already, I'm going to go in and show, go back into Oracle and show you on the invoicing side. We already put this invoice in just so we could show you how we would process it and how it comes through. So I go into invoices. This is my dashboard, and you'll see that it's already in there, ready to be paid. So I'll go ahead and click on it. And when I click on it, it automatically opens up the attachment for me so I can see, there it is. I'll try to put it so it's on the screen. So at this point, we're just going through, double checking everything on the form that's, matching to what's been pulled in. So this is the invoice header. I click on show more. So just going through, making sure supplier, American Academy of Allergy, that matches the supplier site. That's where it will populate. So PUR2, it's already in there. There's the amount, 2000, the description. Sometimes it pulls it in, sometimes it doesn't. So if I just highlight it, it will go ahead and pull it in there. And that's everything we need to fill out for there. I'll go ahead and save at this point. And now we're going down to the lines, and I will go ahead and add a line. So here's the item, put in the amount, the distribution combination. I didn't copy it, so I'll just go ahead and enter it real quick. 3109. So at this step, I'll just remind you to just please make sure you're putting in the correct account information. Lots of zeros. Okay. I'm going to hit OK. Scroll down, everything looks okay. There's the description. Right now it's requesting a ship to location in here, which obviously there wouldn't be one. So we're just going to put in a dummy location just to bypass this. So that's everything that's needed. And then I am going to go ahead and go to my columns and show all What happened here? Let's see. Weird. Oh, well, usually it'll show the column, the headers all up here. It's not doing that right now. But I would go to the tax section over here. And then the product category, that's where I would select the category that we put on the form, which was memberships. And that's all that's required. So I'm going to go ahead and save again at this point. So everything from the form looks good, matches here. I just go down and double check that the total is matching what's due. At this point, go ahead and validate it. So it's validated, then you go back into invoice actions and you will go to approval, initiate. Not saying that. Current state. It's supposed to initiate and send it off for approval. Well, that's fine. That was the last step anyway. So once we click that, it will get sent through or it'll route if it needs to route to somebody and it will get sent off for payment. And I think that's all I had. And this form will be on the supplier chain website. So it will get added there at some point. And I think that's all I had. So if you have any questions.
Questions about the non-PO form?
When you were selecting the, I'm not using the right word, but the location or the sites, I think it was called, it had a little bit of a triangle with an arrow, a yellow triangle with an exclamation point in it. I wonder what that was trying to tell us. You still selected it, but I was just curious what it was saying. When we were trying to look for the supplier site, that's the word, sorry, supplier site.
Oh, for the supplier site. Let me go back and see. Okay, go back in here. Oh, do you mean this one right
Yeah.
here?
Yeah.
That's just a very unexciting caution triangle.
Meaning it has no email or something? Like that you can't, there's no, name associated to send this payment to or something?
It's not actually about transmission. It's just more of a name, the contact field.
Okay. Just curious what it was.
If that's all, I guess we can move on.
Any other questions for Rita? Fairly straightforward. So again, this is going to be for anything that any payments that we make today that are not associated with a PO or on a P card. So we ideally with this would be a smaller, narrower window of transactions. All right. There's always chat if you change your mind. And I think was most of what we wanted to do. Eddie, do you feel like we've got some time to show any of the reporting functionality?
I think so. I think we got 20 minutes. Again, unless there's any other questions on chat that we might have missed. We want
I
to
think
go
people would love a
through.
taste of the reports.
Yeah, all right, cool. Let's do that.
While you're doing that, Crystal, if you wouldn't mind, just in case we get short on time, throw up in chat again the link to our survey. So if folks need to jump out early or anything, they can at least see that in the chat, and we'd really appreciate some feedback on there about what's working, what's not working, but most specifically, what would you like to see at one of our future demos that we haven't been able to cover today? And I just wanted to again thank everyone for coming. If anyone jumps off early, and then we'll let Eddie do some reporting.
All right. So one thing I did wanted to mention, as you can see, you've seen a couple different screens. A lot of these look a little bit different. We are working in to see, what determines kind of the view that you have. There's ways to, customize this also as well. But again, we want to go into that, but just kind of a little heads up in there for like you're seeing maybe Mark's screen looked a little bit different than mine. It's just a setup. So anyway, again, not necessarily knowing how to get there. Let's just kind of focus on the reports. I'm going to tools and reports and analytics. So this area is essentially where we're going to have our canned reports, right? So somewhat similar to what we have in decision support today. And we have a number of canned reports that we have put together based on some of the DS reports that we have today. And I want to focus on three, if I have the time here, that I think will be helpful for campus users. So the first one is the UCD payables report. This is essentially an invoice report, right? And one of the things that you'll see here is that we have added quite a bit of filtering in a lot of these, more in some than others. And I think the reason why is I think we thought, you know what, let's just, instead of going with less as we go live, let's just go with more. And then if we need to pare down, then we'll pare down. But again, this is essentially an invoice report, right? I want to look at all the invoices I have in process for my unit, maybe for the last whatever amount of time, right? So I've already run this report, but just to kind of highlight some of the fields here, you have your dates, invoice from date to date. We added all of the chart of accounts segments here. We thought that will be helpful to have on a report. Oracle has all the different search functionality. You can go into invoicing and you can search for specific invoices. What you don't have in those searches is the chart of account filters. So if you're looking for your own department, so for example, let's say I want to find all of the invoices for, my, I think it's SCMS, I believe starts with. If I wanted to maybe find all of my invoices for this specific department, right, I could select that one and I could run for specific dates and just pull those invoices. So again, this is, we have maybe more filters that you might think you need, but we wanted to err on the side of caution to just have a little bit more at the beginning. So again, I would just, if I wanted to run it, I would just select here the Excel version and run it. I already have it pulled here from earlier, and then you'll see the output here. Again, hopefully we have all of the information that you would be looking for on an invoice report, right? Your invoice number, your description at the header level, who your requester is, when this invoice was created, the amount, the tax amount, the dates. You're going to have the information of your supplier or vendor, including addresses, all the way down to the country. You have the status of the invoice if you want to look at that as well. If there's been any payments as well, or what the payment amount would be, the status of the payment number. Again, we just wanted to include as much information as we could here for invoices. What you'll probably find helpful as well here will be the chart of accounts information. If you're familiar with it, you have your entity, your fund, your financial department, your natural account, your purpose, and some of the other fields as well. Also, the POET information, again, PPM, if you're a little more familiar with that, you'll get that information in the site as well. And again, a few other fields here, but this is just, again, essentially an invoice report that you'll be able to kind of filter through different values of the chart of accounts, different dates, and hopefully get what you need. Okay, let me stop 1 second here just to see if I have any specific questions on this. Check cash date be added to the report. So Tiffany, this is an invoice report, not a payment report. So for payments, you would likely want to go directly into the Oracle searches, search for the payment, and you'll be able to tell, you'll be able to look at some of that information. Yes, filters can be saved. I believe there is a functionality, again, one of those things that we haven't really played around with too much, but there's a lot of actions here. You can actually schedule this report to be run. Again, I haven't played around with the functionality, so I don't have all the details, but there is a lot of this other functionality here that we haven't explored too much, that as maybe we get closer to go live, we can all take a look. Demo payment report. Tiffany, we don't have a payment report. The searches for payments just exist in the user interface in Oracle, so we don't actually have a payment report to pull. Thanks, Mike. All right, so moving on to another report here. This is maybe the most simple one out of the three that I'm going to show you today. We are going to be looking at requisitions. And again, not worrying too much about how to get there. Just want to make sure to get you there. This UCD requisition and PO activity report. This is essentially a report that we would like to probably use when we're just looking at requisitions. We want to maybe look at the requesters of those requisitions, who has entered different requisitions through a period of time, again, maybe for a specific department, and just try to get the information on those recs, the status of them. Have they already created a PO? Is a PO in open status? Again, you can see some of the filtering that you have here. Who entered the requisition? This will be an individual. Requester, again, this will also be an individual. You have some of the dates, and again, you have your chart of accounts filter at the bottom here as well. And again, just like I had earlier, I already had this one ready to go. So you can see here, for example, we have the same requisition. We have two different lines on them. That's why you see two different lines here. So you have the, who entered the requisition, who was the requester of that requisition. That could be different. The requisition number, your total value of the line. What is the status of the requisition? It's pending approval, hasn't been approved yet, whether it might be by the financial department approver, or maybe it's en route with some of the other teams that will be on the workflow. And then you also get your chart of accounts information in here. Let's see if we have one that actually has a PO. So we'll take a few here. So if you already had a PO that was out there for a requisition, so we'll take a look at these two here. You could see we have one line. The PO in here is this one. And you can see what the amount is, and then what the status of the PO is. So you can actually go from requisition to PO and then see what the status is. And same thing, you have the chart of accounts information here. So not a lot of information on this one. We're looking at this one more from a workload perspective. Who's creating requisitions? Where are they in the process of, again, approvals? Where is the PO in the process of approval? All right. Going back down, making sure we're all good. Okay, cool. And then the third report I wanted to go through here is the comprehensive spend report, which is, no pun intended, the most comprehensive one we actually have. This is essentially a PO report. When you go through it, again, you're going to see a lot of filters on this one. This is the one that has the most filters. And again, we're going to leverage this one for a lot of different reporting that we're going to need on the SEM side, but I think the users might find this one helpful as well. Similarly, again, you have your different, date ranges. If you want to add, you have your specific PO numbers. You just want to pull it by that specific PO, suppliers, and you have all the chart of account information. As well as a lot of information at the bottom that really our central SCM procurement team will find a lot very helpful. Things such as, let's see, small business first. Maybe we want to pull something specific by that field. By system-wide agreements. If we have confirming orders, maybe things like that. Again, I have pulled this report already. So in the interest of time, I already have it here. Again, more similar to the invoice report that you saw earlier. A lot of information on it. You have the purchase order, the description, the status of the PO, the buyer, again, supplier information all the way down to the country. You have your ship to locations as well. Let's see here. You have your line information as well. At the item descriptions at the line level. You see quantity, unit of measurement, if there's any, unit price and total amounts. You have all your chart of accounts information over here as well. So again, fairly comprehensive when it comes to purchase orders and all the information that you have out there. Again, a lot more other info here. As I've mentioned a few times, if any of your team members are part of the SCM super user group, they have user guides to go to these reports, and they will have the ability to start going into this views, start playing around with them, and hopefully provide some feedback to make sure that we're not missing anything, or if maybe something's not working, we definitely would love to get that information. As you can imagine, there's only so much that we can test, so we definitely appreciate everyone jumping in there and really helping us out with all this.
Hey,
But again, yeah, Mike, go ahead.
Eddie, we got a question in there. Will the PO automatically close once the invoice is paid with all the line items?
It will. It will go into close status. Now, Oracle has a additional close status, which is called finally close. From an encumbrance perspective, if that's maybe where we're trying to get to, once you fully invoice all the lines, all the encumbrance should be relieved. But at the end of the year, our central procurement team is also going to have to go through a process of finally closing all the POs. It's essentially just, killing that PO for the future state. But in terms of your question, yes, fully invoiced. You invoice all the lines, PO will go in close status, encumbrances will be relieved.
And closed status can be reopened. Finally
Correct.
closed is put to bed. It's out to pasture. And then we have another one. Can an approver edit anything in a routed PO? For example, on the accounting line, the edit DFF, non-taxable if missed, or editing something on the COA string if you are also an approver for the new COA string.
Yep,
I don't
that's a great. No,
Go ahead.
I don't believe you're. No, you're right. Sorry, Mike. I don't. No, you're not able to. The approver is not able to make changes to the requisition. So just kind of terminology, right? You actually are approving the requisition. You aren't approving the purchase order, but you are not able to make any changes to the requisition. You will have to reject it and have the person who initiated the requisition make those changes.
I think that is, you are caught up in chat. So if anybody has anything else, please take themselves off mute.
Yep. All right, 6 minutes. That's what I had on reports. Again, a couple different ones that hopefully people will find helpful and useful. They're out there again for the super users to start testing. Hopefully they'll be able to do that, and then we can get some feedback and continue to refine these as necessary.
If a rec is denied, will there be a reason field so the creator will know why it was denied?
Yeah, that when the approver rejects the requisition, it is actually mandatory for them to add a note in there as to why they're rejecting it.
Will we receive an email when the PO is disapproved? I don't believe it's an email. I think it's a bell notification.
And by disapprove, you mean it got to the buyer and the buyer did not approve the PO? I just want to make sure I'm using the right terminology here. So Mike, maybe help me out with that.
Rejected is the same as disapproved.
I would assume that the question is more focused on the requisition process, not on the PO side.
Okay.
They
So
get all
yes.
merged together today, but they're different in Oracle.
Got it. Yeah. Yes, you will get a notification. In terms of the email, like Mike says, I believe there's a functionality for emails for everyone. We haven't explored that for, I guess, obvious reasons, right? We don't want to turn on emails when we're testing because it might get a little too crazy. But there are notifications on email. But to be safe, as we've known, you will get a notification on your bell, on your notification icon here, and I can show it very quickly. You can see I have a lot of notifications from all the testing that I've been doing. So if you're a requester on a requisition, you will get notifications when the requisition is approved or rejected, and also when the PO is then approved as well.
Yeah, I'll just remind everybody that the kind of the core functionality of Oracle is a little outside of our swim lane, and so things, even to the extent of the ad hoc approvers, is stuff that we just kind of scratch at because that's basically how does workflow work in Oracle at large. It's not really a supply chain piece, similar to notifications, all of your preferences, how your dashboard looks. Those are all things that are sort of, there are other work streams that are helping with that, but it's not necessarily us, and it might be a little bit more, everyone's kind of on their own to figure out how they want those things to look and feel.
Tracy,
Eddie, I know I'll be able to play with those reports, but I wondered from your perspective, is it showing the PO, or can you pivot it so that you get a list of open POs with the balance remaining, sort of like the DS 46, or you know, is that in there, or?
I believe so. I believe so. Like I said, I haven't really played around with them too much. We just wanted to add as much information as possible. The PO number is there, the status of the PO is there, and the remaining amount is there. So
Okay.
I would expect that you'll be able to create some formulas and pivot to be able to get that information.
Excellent, good news, thank you.
how do departments get notified if an invoice we send to get paid cannot get paid due to whatever reason? Is that also a bell notification? So a disapproved invoice?
That is not, because there's no, the workflow is not coming from the department. That's a central office function to initiate invoicing. So if something is disapproved in the workflow, that will go back to the central office initiators. If there's a reason why the invoice can't get processed, such as the PO doesn't exist, or it's for the wrong thing, or the amounts are wrong, there's a hold process for the invoice where our team will then communicate with the PO requester or the supplier if we cannot find the PO requester to resolve whatever that issue is before the invoice can move forward, which by the way is very similar to today's process. So Jennifer, you let me know if that didn't answer fully your question there.
All right, I think we're almost right at time.
Okay, well, I think with that, I want to just again thank everybody who came out today to see our demo. I would strongly encourage you to come back next month. We have, I think we posted the link, maybe even at the top of the chat thread, what we're covering next month, or at least our preliminary thoughts. But please do provide feedback in the survey so that we know what you want to see and we know what is working and what isn't working. I appreciate everybody's patience with this process. We're you know, I like to say at the beginning, but I'll say it at the end here today, we're all on the same team here. We are all working towards the same goal. We do not have full autonomy over Oracle. We have a little bit to poke at the fringes. And so we're trying our best to get the most for our campus, for our teams and your teams to be able to get their business done. And I think our goal here again is making sure that there are no surprises come January, or at least as few surprises as possible. So that folks have seen this system as many times as they can and are know what they're getting into. And at the very least, we're all on the same train getting into it together. So thank you all very much for coming out, and thank you for all of our presenters today. Well done. Have a great rest of your day.